Black women, being pregnant can be life-threatening. The human experience in general is dependent upon the reproduction of new life to continue the legacy of the parent that came before. In simpler terms, children are quite literally the future. Women, as a part of that equation, are an instrumental factor in the preservation of culture, heritage, legacy, and the species in general. In countless movies like Children of God and shows like The Handmaid's Tale, we see these horrific artistic interpretations of how society begins to break down when the population is not being replaced. What's often missing from that perspective is the experiments for women during that process. In the mainstream, we saw mommy movements centered around instructional books like What to Expect When You're Expecting, showing the magical and wonderful nature of pregnancy and becoming a mother as challenging and an adjustment, but still a simple navigation with the right tools and resources. What's largely left out of these conversations that makes us feel so warm and bubbly about the birthing process is that a lot of Black women do not survive delivery. In the US alone, Black women are 3 times more likely to experience death during childbirth, according to the CDC, than their non-Black counterparts. While that number has decreased over the last 50 years, the fact remains that procreation for Black women is a serious gamble. While all experts are constantly going back and forth regarding systematic racism and where it branches and how to measure it and its effects on marginalized people, racism in healthcare is as American as apple pie. Simply put, our healthcare is biased because people are biased. Same with all systems. Healthcare, unfortunately, falls into the abyss and Black women are left paying the cost. Dr. Janice Sabin writes in a 2020 AAMC article, "Half of white medical trainees believe such myths as Black people have thicker skin or less sensitive nerve endings than white people. An expert looks how false notions and hidden biases fuel inadequate treatment of minorities' pain. Biased perceptions built around racist pseudoscience and harmful media depictions of minorities and marginalized groups have led to overt disparities in patient treatment. Black patients widely report not being believed when they are in pain, coupled with sexist stereotypes of the strong Black woman, and there's a direct line for expectant Black mothers with untreated life-threatening circumstances. Healthcare in the U.S. is not structured to actually take care of anyone aside from those who find themselves on the right side of their bank accounts. There's a stark difference in the amount of healthcare available. Among other issues plaguing the Black community, poverty is the foundation of most issues. And while poverty itself is an evergreen, undiscriminating epidemic that goes completely unnoticed by the powers that be for the global community, for Black Americans, it is far too familiar and aesthetic to ignore. Poverty is the root at which branches some of the most dangerous fruits for Black women: drugs, violence, inequitable educational opportunities, and lack of access to quality health care. Because poverty hits women harder than men in general, Black women are being backed into an intersectionality corner of racism and sexism that can wreak havoc on any expecting Black mother. Historically, women's lack of access to the workforce and ability to earn an income meant that marriage and familial standing would determine their socioeconomic status, and thus their quality of health care. While feminism and progressive movements have started to close the gap for some women, it has always been a wider leap for Black women to cross. Hospitals located in communities with the densest populations of Black women are understaffed, under-equipped, and underfunded, relying mostly on dwindling government funding, while private hospitals tend to focus their accessibility outside of these communities, who need it the most. In a Pittsburgh Post-Gazette article, author Lillian Thomas writes, "At a time when research shows that being poor is highly correlated with poor health, hospitals and doctors are following privately insured patients to more affluent areas rather than remaining anchored in communities with the greatest healthcare needs." The Post-Gazette Journal Sentinel analysis shows that nearly 2/3 of the roughly 230 hospitals open since 2000 are in wealthier, mostly suburban areas. As healthcare systems open those facilities, they have been closing their urban counterparts. The number of hospitals in 52 major cities in the United States has fallen from its peak of 781 in 1970 to 426 in 2010, a drop of 46%. And in the last 10 plus years, that number has increased even more. Most of the facilities closed were small to mid-sized community hospitals in poor urban neighborhoods, and public hospitals, leaving many low-income neighborhoods with no safety net hospital. And the impact of decreasing hospitals and dwindling doctors is palpable in those low-income communities, where many, including Black women, reside. Always the afterthought with the highest risk calculation, Black women and their safety are never first on a priorities list for safety or health concerns. Meaning the lines for the few hospitals that are left are out the door, and quality of care begins to decline as doctors are swamped with an influx of patients that have no other options or finances but to use the emergency room as their primary care physician. So what can be done? More specifically, at least for me, what can Black women do to look out for signs that you are not receiving quality care, and how to protect yourself as much as possible, because no one else will? Get regularly checked. While healthcare options can feel scarce, do as much as you can to live a healthy lifestyle, and that means getting checked up regularly. From your blood pressure to cancer pre-screenings, make sure to build a health profile for yourself. And when you find a doctor that you connect with, like, and trust, it can help you eliminate a lot of the reservation and obstacles to healthcare. Get a second opinion. Finding a doctor that you can trust wholeheartedly for Black women sometimes can be a challenge. And until then, and sometimes even then, it's always best to get a second or even third or fourth opinion on any healthcare decision that you make. Report any biased behavior. Black women often do not report biased or unprofessional behavior because they feel as if their claims will fall on deaf ears, which they often do. Do not be discouraged, and it is your right to make yourself heard. Make it a point to report any doctors, assistants, nurses, or any biased or sexist behavior that you encounter to the appropriate party, whether that be the hospital board of medicine, lawyer, or even the local news. Capture a paper trail and put in writing what happened so it can be documented, and keep a copy of everything. Ask questions. When visiting a doctor for a health appointment, it is important for you as the patient to know and to understand what is happening and why it's happening. I'm going to include a link to a 2021 PureWow article outlining some questions that Black, Indigenous, and people of color should ask their physician. These are questions like, why are you prescribing this medication? What are the side effects that I should be looking out for? Can I take this along with my other prescriptions? Know what's happening with your health. Do your research. Look for testimonials when searching for a new doctor. Ask around from friends with good experiences and vet the person that will handle your health care, especially when you were expecting. Look for programs that offer assistance or access by other means to care. And if finances are an issue, look online for local resources or organizations that offer or can sponsor checkups, rides to appointments, or oftentimes free physician visits. Contact your local church or your local recreational center. Oftentimes these programs, if not held by the facility themselves, may be hosting or sponsoring programs or events at those same facilities. For Black women, what can and should be an exciting shift in a person's life can be the most dangerous when faced with a biased system that is completely apathetic to needed systematic change for fear of upsetting the status quo. This means that you are the best protector of your own mortality. Sadly, even more so sometimes than the one in the white coat. Receive. Thank you for checking out this episode of the Me and a Mic podcast. While you're here, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share it with anyone who can or should receive. Be sure to check out the blog at MickeyJKing.com to follow the Libra story and to check out more content just like this. I'm Mickey, and until next time, it's just me, my melanin, and a mic. Bye.